Oh, hi everyone, Prothany Duck Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Mac DeMarco album, 5 Easy Hot Dogs. This is the latest full-length LP from one of the chillest singers and songwriters on the indie circuit today, Mr. Mac DeMarco, who is pretty much a vet in the game at this point, but nonetheless seems not so content to just rest on his laurels, or simply pump out what is expected of him by like the festival crowd. That was made clear in the progressive maturation of his songwriting from 2 all the way up until This Old Dog. But then he switched things up pretty significantly on 2019's Here Comes the Cowboy, which had its catchier highlights but simultaneously dropped tracks that were a little experimental for him in that they were super repetitive, like the intro cut, or very stripped back, like in the case of Heart to Heart as well as Preoccupied. Then there were also songs on this record that were just unrepentantly goofy, such as Choo Choo. I do commend him for trying some new things on this record, even if a lot of it didn't necessarily pan out, and many fans regard this album to be Mac's worst thus far. Mac is also trying something new on 5 Easy Hot Dogs as well, as this thing's an instrumental album kind of framed in reaction to some artistic restlessness that Mac was experiencing during the pandemic, which could be fertile ground for some cool new ideas, I guess. I've always appreciated the subtle flashes of genius in Mac's guitar work or some of his melodies that have showcased that I think he has a firmer grasp of music theory than some in his lane. Maybe on an instrumental record, Mac will be incentivized to, I don't know, show off some chops, since he's basically leaving open all this space where there might have been a tune or a vocal otherwise. Or at least you could hope. Because 5 Easy Hot Dogs isn't really that. In fact, it's kind of what you could already imagine an instrumental Mac DeMarco album to be if he went about it in the most predictable way possible. Which is funny, but also kind of sad in that I don't think anyone saw an instrumental album coming from Mac DeMarco, but this record pretty much sounds like what you would get if you stripped the vocals out of any number of his previously written and recorded tracks. Which might have not been a bad thing, given that previously popular tracks, such as My Kind of Woman, Ode to Viceroy, as well as Salad Days, all have super standout and sticky guitar work, but many of the instrumentals on Hot Dogs lack even that, such as the song Vancouver 3, which cycles through these really mind-numbing arpeggios with little in the way of any musical development for almost 3 minutes. It's not terrible, it's not offensive, but it's not really gripping or interesting either. There are some breezy but melodic highlights on cuts such as GUALALA and GUALALA 2. The former has these cute staccato little synth melodies that contrast with these sort of enchanting 2-chord passages, the guitars in which feel kind of warped and dreamy in the way that a lot of Mac's guitars do. The latter of these 2 tracks features a very similar formula, but this time around the chords and melodies are much moodier and even more subtly psychedelic. But not every instrumental on this LP is as eventful comparatively. Like the slowly swelling synth notes on Crescent City, for example, aren't really interesting or active enough to take up the spotlight position they occupy. Then the kind of melty, gentle, but discordant notes that pile on top of each other on what I guess is the chorus to Portland. Yeah, that's about the only thing about that track that makes it sound distinct. Portland, too, I found to be much better with a lot of very nuanced details that you might miss if you're not paying attention. Some of the inner workings of the slick guitar licks on this track, along with the harmonized woodwinds and what sounds like some metallic or electronic glitches popping up in the background too. I wish the track developed more across its runtime because it mostly feels like a loop, but I suppose it's fine while it's on. The instrumental variety continues onto the track Victoria, with what sounds like some ghostly vibraphone, something along those lines, playing and ringing out into oblivion, though the tones start to sound kind of awful as they shift around sloppily over the 2 chords in the B section of the song. The rhythm section is pretty stiff and leaves a lot to be desired too, which is kind of the same problem with Vancouver 2, where the guitar work is underscored by what sounds like some very awkwardly played claves, which I hope you enjoy the sound of because from here they make a lot of reappearances on the record. They make for some strange ambiance on the track Vancouver 2, really most of the songs that have a gentler approach, where they don't really seem to complement the surrounding instrumentation. They barely fit fit into the composition on Edmonton, but they are thrown in anyway. And they also don't bring anything to the track Chicago, which is already pretty packed with drums. I love how this one instrument barely fits on so many of these tracks, and just at one point in the track list, Max starts just throwing them in just about everywhere. I mean, really, they do ruin some of these cuts, but even if they weren't there, this record is still kind of riddled with issues. As I don't find the instrumentals to be particularly inspired, these tracks are somehow even more wallpaper than I have previously charged some of Mac's music to be. I feel like this record is essentially what you would get if Mac DeMarco were tasked with coming out with a series of just like, you know, chill, lo-fi study beats, but, you know, in his style. These cuts are tedious, they are absolutely drab and forgettable, to the point where it is unforgivable. I'm feeling a strong 3 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Mac DeMarco, forever.